My name is Matt, and I review retro games. Like anyone who's into gaming on YouTube, I'm a huge fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd, and he's one of my biggest influences. But unlike a number of his audience, I enjoy most of those turds he rips apart, and that's why I now don the moniker of the LJN Defender! Hello and welcome back to the LJN Defender. It's hard to believe that it's been a year and a half since I filmed the pilot episode in this very spot. It feels like just yesterday when I got the idea to stick up for the Louis J. Norman Company. Man, time's flown by. Speaking of time, since I'm here and it's 2015, I can't think of a more fitting occasion to take care of some unfinished business and go back in time with Back to the Future 2 and 3. Back to the Future 2 and 3, much like the topic of LJN Defender number 1, was developed by Beam Software and released in September 1990, a year after the original NES release. As I made perfectly clear in multiple videos, I'm a big fan of the first Back to the Future, and I sincerely believe that it gets a bad rap. However, as hard as it may be to believe, I never played that one back in the day. My Back to the Future experience was with this cart. I rented it at my local mom and pop store when it came out, and while it's been 2 decades since, and my recollection could be a bit fuzzy, I don't recall disliking it. Then again, when thinking back on my first memories of the NES, pretty much everything seemed magical. Is this critically bashed cart really not that bad, or am I being fooled by nostalgia goggles? Well, I know what the internet thinks, but let's give this the fair chance that it deserves and find out for ourselves. Nostalgia or not, that title screen is pretty cool. That's a very nice chiptune rendition of Back in Time, and the pulsating logo is a nice touch, so at least we're off to a better start than the original. In further contrast to Back to the Future, the sequel contains an intro cutscene which lays out the story. The story loosely, and I mean very loosely, follows the events of the film. Future Biff steals the DeLorean and travels back to 1955 to give his younger self the almanac so that he can profit off of the results of the major sports events to come. Beam tossed in the idea of Biff scattering objects in order to protect the almanac, which messes with the space-time continuum. Marty's task is to retrieve the objects and return them to their proper locations in order to undo all of the damage that Biff's greed for power caused. The cutscene ends with the DeLorean, or as the text calls it, the Delarin, taking off, and McFly begins his very important mission. Okay, that's really cool. It's hard to believe that it could go so far downhill from here, but I guess we'll see if it does soon enough. Anyway, Back to the Future 2 and 3 already feels a million light years removed from its predecessor. The original Beam effort was very straightforward. Just make it from point A to point B before the clock hits 0 without getting overwhelmed by bees, hula hoop girls, tough guys, etc. This could be very tricky, but the goal was always very simple. The sequel, on the other hand, doesn't even know the meaning of simple. As the intro cutscene said, Marty has to track down the displaced artifacts and return them to their proper locations. Well, that's very much easier said than done. From the onset, there's no map to guide the player where to go, nor even a checklist of what needs to be collected. Everything is very vague, so the only option is to just start wandering. Unlike most traditional side-scrollers, Back to the Future 2 and 3 allows free roaming towards either the left or right of the screen, so there are a lot of places that the objects can be hiding in. Not only that, but there are multiple screens, similar to the cave in Friday the 13th, so things can get really confusing very quickly. As the protagonist traverses this unfamiliar version of 1985, he'll encounter various creatures and obstacles. These foes hold the keys to McFly's salvation. Literally, stomp on those little buggers Super Mario style to get items such as pizza and soda, which accumulate for extra lives, stars, which provide Marty with projectiles, and most importantly, the keys to access the locked doors mentioned in the intro. Items won't appear from every enemy, but it's best to stomp everyone that you encounter just in case. Also, be ready for the key to present itself, since it quickly falls off screen after the foe is destroyed. On the chance that the key isn't collected before it disappears off screen, don't worry, since all that has to be done is to leave that particular screen and return, which will reset the particular section. Also, just as a warning, be careful not to lose too many lives, since doing so will not only reduce the amount of fuel points to 10, but it will reset the amount of collected keys to 0. Unlimited continues or not, having to start over from scratch is always a pain in the ass. Once the key is collected, head for the nearest door and you're one step closer to the 1985 that Marty used to know. But first, a minigame. Yes, Biff really wanted to secure his place at the top by making our heroes solve a bunch of puzzles to reclaim the lost piece. The minigames can range from fairly straightforward to sheer insanity. Regardless of how high they are on the crazy bonkers scale, the goal is always the same. Collect all of the clocks before the counter ticks down and then the item will appear. Once that's accomplished, a screen pops up showing McFly hoisting it in the air, Link style. Once the item is collected, the next step is to bring it to the room where it belongs. Completing this task is no walk in the park. Not only are there multiple street areas in 1985 that the object could be placed, but there's the possibility that it doesn't even belong in 1985. Remember how the intro cutscene said that Biff scattered items throughout space and time? What that meant is that artifacts from 1955 are in 1985, and those from 2015 are in 1955, etc. This is why the fragile balance of the universe is at stake. People from the 50s would have their minds blown at the sight of a hoverboard, the super cool ride from the movie that made a disappointing transition to this cart, so it's imperative that Marty keeps this from happening. In order to correct the snafu that Biff's actions caused, the teenager has to utilize the DeLorean to travel to the other years to collect and drop off the items. The DeLorean is summoned via the remote control. The remote control can be found by the rundown garage. Once the remote is obtained, our hero can summon the iconic car and head to either of the 2 other years. That is, as long as he has the necessary amount of fuel points. The longer the distance between each area, the more points it will require. If he has enough fuel, all that's left to do is to choose a year and the DeLorean will do the rest. Since Marty remains in Hill Valley regardless of which year he travels to, the overall layout of each section is largely the same. This comes in really handy when accessing certain doors. For example, there's one spot in 1985 where it's too high for him to reach by jumping. The solution to McFly's problem lies in 1955. Travel back from 1985 to 1955 in this spot. Once in 1955, plant one of the seed pods there. Now travel back to 1985 and the seed will have sprouted tall enough for the door to be reached. No matter what year McFly is in, Hill Valley is littered with pipes and manhole covers. These may appear to be merely scenery, but oddly enough, these are the correct locations for each artifact. No joke! What's even less of a joke is that even if one of the hidden rooms is accessed, our hero isn't necessarily out of the woods yet. Accessing one of these hidden rooms brings up some scrambled words in the collective inventory. The scrambled words represent the piece that has to be placed here, and unscrambling them will show which one belongs here. Unless you're a jumble master, these word puzzles may be more of a hindrance than a help. On top of that, the icons for each item aren't always the clearest, and Beam decided to not help out by labeling what they are. All of this can result in one frustrating experience, and what makes this even worse is that if an incorrect choice is made, this will happen. Just kidding. Despite the explosion indicating otherwise, that piece is perfectly fine. Just backtrack and reclaim it. However, if the right choice is made and something like the Walkman is brought back to the room in 1985 where it belongs, then congrats! You managed to save a small part of the space-time continuum. Now do it again 29 more times. Yes, the same tedious task has to be completed over and over and over again. McFly has to kill enemies, get a key, complete a minigame for the object, bring it to the right year, search around aimlessly for the hidden room, and make sure that it's the correct room for the piece, rinse and repeat to the nth degree. That's asking way too much of kids back in the day, and it was asking too much of me now. I spent a few nights of mostly unsuccessful attempts trying to beat this, and in those evening hours, I only managed to return 2 items to their right locations. 2! I tried, guys. I really did, and I hated having to stop when I did. I have the type of dedicated personality that I give my all in order to beat a game, and I felt like a quitter when I stopped, but I had to. I couldn't go on anymore without delaying the release of this review, and that wasn't gonna happen. I know that there are guides and maps out there, as well as videos on YouTube showing what to do, but that to me wouldn't have been fun. A game shouldn't require the player to have a walkthrough at the ready to complete it, and that's why Beam struck out on this one. In their defense though, I know that they included a compass feature which supposedly helps in locating the rooms, but I wasn't able to find it in my last attempt. Still, compass or not, it doesn't make up for this overly dissatisfying experience. With that said though, we're not quite done yet. This is Back to the Future 2 and 3 after all. Even though I didn't beat 2, this review wouldn't be quite complete if I didn't at least take a look at 3. So let's get ready for a wild ride because we're heading back to the Old West. Yeah! Fortunately for players like me that couldn't beat 2, 3 can be accessed via code right from the start. Simply hold B and then press select. Another scrambled phrase will pop up. Rearrange the letters until it says flux capacitor is the power and voila! Part 3 is unlocked. Pressing start brings up a cutscene that looks identical to that in 2, but it deviates soon enough. The mission to recover and destroy the almanac was a success and everything was back to normal. Until a letter arrives from the doc stating that he's lost in the Wild West. As a result, our teenage protagonist has to board the DeLorean again to save the doc. Back to the Future 3 provides some aesthetic differences, but the overall presentation and premise is the same as 2. Being that this is the Old West, Marty's in a cowboy outfit and he's carried in by some kind of bird. The enemies are changed to reflect the era, with Indians, scorpions, and snakes attacking our hero. Besides that, the only other noticeable change is the appearance of the rooms. The doors for the objects are in front of caves now, and the hidden rooms are located under breakable rocks. The main premise is virtually unchanged. We still have to stomp enemies, get keys, access doors, get objects, and bring objects to the right location. However, there are only 10 objects to collect, and all the action takes place in 1875, so it's a bit easier than 2. I still wasn't able to finish it in the hour or so that I spent on it, but all in all, it's somewhat less frustrating than 2. If it wasn't obvious before, my nostalgia got the best of me. The critics are absolutely right about this one. Back to the Future 2 and 3 is not fun and it's not good. The foundation is there to make something good, but the finished product is very lacking and ultimately, I can't really defend it. I will say though that there are parts of it that I appreciate. The minigames, for example, can be very aggravating, but they also require the player to use their noggin. Getting past some of them took serious problem-solving skills, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The only other aspect that I enjoyed was the music. Tanya Smith did quite a good job on the soundtrack. All of the tunes are memorable and convey the right mood for each era. Regardless, it doesn't save Back to the Future 2 and 3 from being less than mediocre. In fact, I had more fun playing Action 52 and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I completely disagree with the GameFAQs community that rated this better than Jekyll and Hyde and the original Back to the Future. The first is way better than this, and I'll take Lou's Cafe and the Swarm of Bees any day over this very vague scavenger hunt. This is without a doubt one of the worst, if not the worst title in the LJN catalog. That's hard for me to say, because part of me will always be somewhat fond of this since I rented it in my early NES days, but even nostalgia can't help this one out. Well, there it is. You guys have been waiting to see what I had to say about this notoriously bad sequel, and now it's out there. To anyone who's expecting me to be able to defend it, I'm sorry, but I just couldn't do it. Even I have my limits, and this is beyond them. Anyway, now that this long-awaited LJN Defender episode has come to an end, be sure to come back on the 18th for the next Cygnus Destroyer's Top 10. I'm not going to say what it's on because I actually don't know right now, but I'm sure it'll be a good one. So, until the next time that another rainbow-branded cartridge needs my assistance, this is Matt, the LJN Defender, signing out. thanks for watching, everyone. Like I said before, come back on the 18th for the next Cygnus Destroyer Top 10, but until then, I've got these videos for you to watch. On the upper left-hand corner, that's the first Cygnus Destroyer Top 10. Top 10 licensed games that get a bad rap. I had a lot of fun making that, and I think you guys will enjoy watching it. I was against doing top 10s for the longest time, but I recently changed my stance on it, and I'm glad I did because I had a blast making it. So check that out. On the upper right-hand corner, that is LJN Defender, the Karate Kid. Thought it would be funny to put that since I kind of teased Back to the Future 2 and 3 in that one. So yeah, check that out. It's an older one, but it's still pretty good. Now on the bottom left-hand corner, that's something a little different. I was recently a guest on the Pixel Tunes radio podcast, which is hosted by Mike of Dude You Haven't Played This Game, and his buddy Ed, who's really into video game music. He's got his own forum thread about where he posts his own stereo tunes. It's pretty cool. I had a lot of fun chatting with those dudes, and I had a lot of fun picking out my 12 tracks. I think you guys will like it. If you're familiar with my videos, well, then you'll probably recognize a number of the tunes in there because a lot of them are from games I reviewed. So yeah, check that out. It's good times. Now, as always, for those of you who are new to the channel, if you like what you saw, then click that red box right there, and that'll subscribe to the channel. You'll be able to keep up to date with all my current content. So, like I said before, until the 18th, for the next Cygnus Destroyer Top 10, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!